Hello, beautiful, and welcome into my world. I am Susie, and as you probably already know, I'm a women's embodiment and empowerment coach. I help women access their feminine power so that they can come home to a feeling of empowerment, of confidence, and live really, truly fulfilled lives. So I want to give you a little bit of a backstory about how I got to where I am, why I'm doing what I'm doing. Everyone has a story, right? So I want to share mine with you. So in the past, I struggled a lot with self-confidence and self-belief. I would constantly compare myself to everyone around me. I would often walk into a room and, look to see if I was the prettiest in the room, the most beautiful in the room, look to see if I was the most intelligent. I was always had this need that I had to be the best. And if I wasn't the best, it would cause me a lot of anxiety, a lot of tension. And I would constantly question whether I was good enough, whether I was good enough for the partner that I was seeing, whether I was good enough in whatever job I had when I was studying uni. And yeah, this led me to a couple of things. I was also really avoidant in conflict. I was super non-confrontational. I never wanted to rock the boat, so I never spoke up at work. I never asked for what I needed or expressed how I really felt. I just kind of shut up and was like a good girl, which led to people pleasing, which ended up in lots of feeling of resentment. And I ended up in a toxic relationship. I ended up in a relationship that had unhealthy, toxic patterns. We would trigger each other. We would enable each other. We were in this trauma loop where we would constantly have these massive, big, really hurtful, really yucky arguments that were quite violent and not nice to be a part of. And so, yeah, I ended up in a toxic relationship. And then after that finished, I ended up in a relationship where it wasn't toxic. It was a lot more healthy, but my needs were still not being met. So I felt, and I was the one in the relationship that was always, reaching out to him. I was the one making plans. I was the one that said, I love you first. I was the one that always went first, and kind of like I was chasing him the whole time. And I didn't feel prioritized. I felt like he had other priorities over spending time with me, over being with me. And yeah, I wasn't receiving the amount of love that I wanted to receive in the relationship. And so that's my past. And the reason that all of that was going on, I want to kind of break it down for you, because I'm sure that there's parts of my story that you resonate, whether it's lack of self-belief, lack of self-confidence, whether it's people pleasing or ending up in toxic relationships or relationships where you're feeling like you're not getting your needs met. Whatever you resonate with, there's reasons behind all of them. So essentially, one of the things that I did to heal and uncover these patterns is I looked at my core beliefs in my childhood, because everything comes from that place, right? And sometimes it's easy to blame ourselves, to wonder why we chose certain relationships or why we stayed in certain relationships. But it's really about finding forgiveness in ourselves for what we chose and understanding why. So uncovering the core beliefs that were created in my childhood, which were around abandonment. My dad left when I was 9, so I had this core wound of abandonment. My dad also struggled a lot with self-confidence and self-worth. And so even though he was always super supportive to me with, whatever I chose to do, he was very, very, very self-critical. And children learn how you treat yourself not how you treat them. So especially if you're a mum, if you treat your kids with love, with support, if you encourage them, that's beautiful. But if you don't do the same to yourself, if you're not that beautiful, loving, supportive, encouraging, validating person to yourself in your own mind and in your words, how you speak about yourself, then that's going to rub off onto your children as well. So I inherited the way that my dad saw himself, spoke about himself, which was from a really low self-worth, low self-belief, low self-confidence perspective. And my parents also had a very explosive relationship. They would argue a lot. And so from a little girl, I learned to suppress my needs to keep the peace because there was already so much drama going on around me. My little girl, the little girl that I was, learnt not to rock the boat anymore, just to sit down, be a good girl. So I achieved a lot. You know, I was a high achiever, which ended up resulting in perfectionism because I also received a lot of praise and a lot of love for achieving. So then as a young adult, I became a perfectionist and I had to achieve and be the best and make sure that everything I did was perfect, because if I didn't feel like it was enough in myself. So I went about uncovering all of these core beliefs and wounds that were created in childhood and worked on reprogramming them all, on choosing new beliefs for myself and repeating them, and then choosing embodied actions that are different to what I used to take. So, you know, if I did a certain task, not needing it to be perfect anymore. So these are the like little steps that you start to take from a new belief perspective. I got really, really good at emotional intelligence and mastering my emotions. In the past, I would always bottle my emotions up. I didn't express them in relationships. I didn't know how to express when I was hurt, when I was triggered, when I wasn't receiving something that I needed, like love or validation. I found it very, very hard to speak up about any of these things. And I felt, controlled by my emotions, because I didn't understand them. I didn't understand where they were coming from, and I didn't understand how to process them. So I had a lot of resentment and frustration around emotions because they would rule my day and I would have mood swings. But once I learned emotional intelligence, how to self-soothe, how to process my emotions, how to move them through my body, all of that shifted and cleared. And after my last relationship ended, which was the relationship that it wasn't, you know, toxic, but I wasn't receiving the love that I truly wanted in that relationship, I dedicated my time to really, truly embodying self-love. So self-love is something that's spoken about a lot. And I always knew that I needed self-love, but I didn't know how to do it. So that's where embodied self-love comes in, where you really get clear on what is my love language and how can I love myself through my main love language, but also all of the other 5 languages. It's about really connecting in with your body. As women, our connection with our bodies is super, super important. So creating that beautiful divine connection with your body, loving your body, using embodiment practices and self-pleasure practices to connect in with your beautiful body, to see her radiance, to see the beauty of your own body, of your own face, to enjoy yourself, enjoy your body, and feel that love come from within, and also experience pleasure from within, so that you're not reliant on something external to you to experience pleasure, to experience love, to experience fulfillment, to experience touch, to experience affection. And I also learned how to communicate, because I was not taught in my childhood how to communicate. My parents, as I said, had a very explosive marriage, a very explosive relationship, and they didn't speak about what they needed from each other. They didn't speak when they were hurt or triggered. They would just argue. And so I really needed to learn how to communicate, how to bring up things that feel uncomfortable in a partnership. And honestly, with my partner now, he and I were just talking the other day, and I said, oh my gosh, communication is the biggest relationship hack ever. Like, seriously, when you're in a partnership where you're openly communicative about everything, it's such a life hack, because you know how to best love and serve the other person. You know what they need, and you know what upsets them. And when you're in a true, conscious, secure relationship, both people in the relationship truly want to serve the other. That's what a relationship is. You want to serve the other, and you don't want to upset each other. So when you're in a relationship that is secure, that is conscious, and you use compassionate, empowered communication, it's insanely amazing, like what you can do with each other, for each other, how you can feel. It's so beautiful. And the last thing I learned was to get really, really clear on my desires. I've always had lots of desires, lots of dreams, lots of goals, but I would just kind of daydream. I would daydream about them, and then that's it. And that's something that my dad used to do too. He used to daydream a lot. He had lots of dreams, but never achieved them. And so I learned to use these dreams and these desires and then create empowered action around them. So once I had learned to build emotional intelligence, and especially once I had learned to unprogram the core beliefs that were created in childhood and encode new beliefs of confidence, of self-worth, of self-belief, once I'd learned how to do all of those things, then came the empowered action to actually reach my dreams, my desires, and my goals. Because your dreams, your desires, and your goals, often the steps that you need to take there, the steps that you need to take to get to where you want to be, are uncomfortable, and so they're beyond your comfort zone. And if you have low self-belief, low self-worth, low self-confidence, that will stop you from taking those steps. But once you deprogram, reprogram, unpattern all of those steps, then you're able to create new empowered action. Again, it will feel uncomfortable, but you'll have that confidence there to back you up to then take those empowered, beautiful actions. So that's my story. Thank you for listening, and I will speak to you soon on our call. I'm really looking forward to hearing about your story, hearing about what you're struggling with, and see if I can help you. Mwah.